everybody. My name is Helaine Bach, and today I'm going to talk to you about graphic design and Reform Jewish prayer books. The intersection of design and Judaism is a rich and engaging topic of study, but not one that many scholars have taken up. I, on the other hand, couldn't imagine studying anything else. My roles as a designer and as a Jew are central to my identity, and I thrive in the intersection of those two things. And I have for my whole life. This journey began when I was 10 years old, and my congregation in El Paso, Texas, received our copies of the Reform Movement's newest Siddur, or prayer book, the Mishkan Tefillah. This prayer book was unlike anything I had prayed with before, and I had a lot of questions. I remember asking my dad, who makes the prayer books and how often? He told me that this prayer book was different from the ones that came before it because it had been a whole committee that worked on it, and a woman, Rabbi Elise Frischman, who served as the editor. To answer the second part of my question, the Reform Movement puts out a Siddur every 30 years or so. From then on, I was determined to be a part of the next one. 12 years later, I am well on my path. After starting my research on design and prayer books early last fall, I realized that I needed to go to the source. I spent a week at the Hebrew Union College and the American Jewish Archives in Cincinnati, where I was able to totally immerse myself in study. I spent hours pored over collections in the archives, and when they closed, I moved to the campus library. I studied with experts, made incredible discoveries, and reaffirmed my love for Judaism and design. While my thesis covers design decisions made in the Mishkan Tefillah, there are so many areas of study that this conversation about design and prayer book encompasses. I keep telling myself, as is Dr. Rodenborn, that there's always grad school. Without further ado, here is a relatively brief overview of prayer and Reform Judaism. Public prayer became a central tenet of Judaism with the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. By the 6th century, prayer was standardized and the first prayer book was created in the 9th century. Reform Judaism has its origins in the Haskalah in 19th century Germany, and the first Reform prayer book was made in Hamburg in 1819. Independent of European Reform Judaism, the first American Siddur was made in 1830 in Charleston, South Carolina, by the Reformed Society of Israelites. And Isaac Mayer Weiss brought European Reform Judaism to America in 1846. Over the next half-century, Rabbi Weiss helped establish a Reform movement in America, along with the Rabbinical School and the Central Conference for American Rabbis, the CCAR. The first movement prayer book was published in 1894, revised in 1918, and then revised again in 1940. Its successor, Gates of Prayer, was published in 1975. By 1994, it was clear that the landscape of American Reform prayer had changed drastically. Peter Noble and Daniel Schechter set out to understand this landscape through the Lilly Cummings study. They presented their findings to the CCAR in 1988, and in 1999, the editorial committee was formed, with Rabbi Elise Frischman as editor. The resulting prayer book, Mishkan Tefillah, was published in 2007. Before we can discuss design-based liturgical reform, it is important to consider the changes to content that characterize Reform liturgy. Also important is the distinction between little r reform and big R reform. The verb to reform means to change something in order to improve and adapt it for modern sensibilities. Big R reform is a denomination of Judaism that aims to do just that. These are the central goals of Reform liturgy, first described by Rabbi Jacob Malachowski in 1968, before the publishing of Gates of Prayer. Reform liturgy includes the use of vernacular, first German and then English and American prayer books, the shortening of the service, and intellectual consistency. This refers to content in prayers referring to outdated concepts like the sacrificial cult and physical Mashiach. Also, reform to liturgy includes the addition of new prayers, specifically following the Holocaust and the establishment of the State of Israel. One of the big questions Reformed Jews face is what to do with problematic texts. Traditional Reform Reform Sidurim often omitted the prayers that seemed problematic. Mishkan Tefillah attempts to reintroduce some of these prayers in thoughtful ways. If one includes the text in the prayer book, they often will either revise the text, not recite it, or recite it as is. If you choose to recite the text, one can translate it or can choose to not translate it or provide a creative translation. These are not possible in Israel, and the author of a lot of this information is Dalia Marks, a professor in Israel, and she provides really great commentary on what it is to pray as a Jew in Israel. Again, not the topic of this thesis, but very interesting. The other options are to provide a midrashic explanation or to juxtapose it with an alternate text. This is often the case with the prayer Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, which includes very male metaphors for God. It's prayed at the high holidays, and often in prayer books alongside it will be an alternate reading with fewer gendered metaphors for God. And then the final option is perhaps the most reform of all, to invite people to struggle with the text. That is what I invite you to do today, as I begin my observations on design-based liturgical reform. My analysis of design in the Mishkan Tefillah is based on a few things. First, I conducted a categorical research of the drafts of the Mishkan Tefillah. There were 9 of them altogether, 8 drafts and the final in the archives, and I was able to literally lay them all out on a table and flip to the different pages, and everybody, the other archivists that were there thought I was like insane, so they were like reading about very different things, but they really enjoyed having me there. It was really cool. Also in the archives, I was able to read all of the Sayach notes from the editorial committee, both in the collections of Peter Noble and Rabbi Louise Frischman. I also read through a lot of her handwritten notes, which was just like the coolest thing I could have ever done. And that's an example of one of her notes, specifically regarding design. In addition to this archival research, I have been studying design for 4 years and praying with the Mishkan Tefillah for 12. So, I analyzed Mishkan Tefillah with consideration for 3 aspects of book design: book structure, page layout, and typography, or the way that letters are presented on the page. The first thing you would notice when you pick up a prayer book is its binding direction. Hebrew books are traditionally bound on the right because Hebrew is read from right to left. However, early American prayer books were bound on the left, causing awkwardness in prayer. One of the desires expressed in the Lily Cummings study was better flow. In part, this was achieved by binding the siddur on the right side. An additional cue for the worshiper is the embossed cover, which provides tactile feedback for opening on the correct side. Mishkan Tefillah was revolutionary in terms of the design of its navigation. Navigation refers to the visual cues that tell the reader where they are in the context of the service. The sidebar navigation tells readers not only the name of the current prayer, but also the prayer's place in the context of the rest of the service. This model is similar to visual cues used on web pages, a relatively new concept in the early 2000s. And also you can see that it's provided in Hebrew on the left side, on the right side, and in English, in transliteration on the left side. All right, so the double page layout is perhaps the most groundbreaking aspect of design in the Mishkan Tefillah. Rabbi Louise Frischman was not the first to suggest this type of layout, but she was the first to make it a reality. The first record of a double-page layout was described by Rabbi Robert Kahn in the early 1970s during his tenure as the head of the liturgical committee of the CCAR. I actually found this letter that described his ideas while I was in the archives, and it was incredible. It describes in detail exactly what you see here, and did not come to fruition until nearly 30 years later. So the double-page layout consists of a formula that is applied consistently across all prayers in the prayer book. On the right-hand page, you have Hebrew, transliteration, translation, the Chatzimah, which is the end of the prayer, and it helps mitigate the announcing of prayer of page numbers, so you know, oh, we said the Chatzimah, time to turn the page. And then we also have commentary on the bottom, and then interpretive readings on this side. And this layout is applied on all prayers. The goal of this layout is to provide variety in a modular way, where anytime you pray the service, you pick one reading from each double-page spread, and the service could be different from any other prayed before. The typographic treatment of altered text, while not as noticeable to the average worshiper, was very interesting to me. Hebrew is a gendered language by nature, and every prayer is written in the form of a masculine speaker. There are a few instances, however, where the Mishkan Tefillah provides a text in the female form of speech. One example of this is in the prayer Moda Ani, where Moda Ani is provided alongside it. See that here. Another way that consideration for gender has been included in the Mishkan Tefillah is the inclusion of matriarchs in the prayer for our ancestors. My favorite part about this inclusion is that there is actually no typographic distinction marking the inclusion as new or different. The matriarchs are included because they always should have been, and we treat them typographically as such. Alternately, where altered text concerning tradition has been added back in, there is a distinction in the typography. For example, the reintroduction of prayer for harvest in Israel is indented, and the inclusion of the word hametim, which is the dead and refers to resurrection, is in parentheses. During the service, there are moments where tradition calls for the congregation to sit or rise, to bow or face a different direction. However, these stage directions are not consistent across the movement, and so were removed from the Mishkan Tefillah very consciously. Rather, you have explanations of them in the footnote, as you can see here. This is how they appeared in previous prayer books. The use of color and imagery in a prayer book is not new. Handmade sidurim from the medieval period were beautifully decorated. However, printed prayer books before Mishkan Tefillah were very conservative. Early drafts of the Mishkan Tefillah show a stark departure from the plain text style of its predecessors. I often make the joke that this is what would happen if we gave rabbis word art, which is probably what happened considering it was 2001. Eventually, a designer was hired, and the use of imagery was toned down, and color was used mainly for emphasis. You can actually see, if you look through the drafts, when this happens, and it's pretty incredible. However, one prayer remained the same for almost every draft, and that is the Shema. The Shema, the central prayer to Judaism, is treated with the respect it deserves. Designed simply and beautifully, this is the spread that started it all for me. Every time I say these words in prayer, I hold the Siddur close to my heart, feeling the physical connection to the words on the page. In that instance, the vehicle for prayer is just as holy as the prayer itself. Thank you. This is the part that sounds a lot like the end of a Bat Mitzvah speech. I could probably say 5 of the people in here could have been my mentor. It really takes a village, especially when your mentor goes to teach abroad in March. So Dr. Helaine Bach was absolutely incredible and fundamental in helping me with the historical aspect of my research. Kim Garza was very, very helpful both in keeping me on track and helping me with the design. And Dr. Rodenborn let me sit in his office for probably hours at this point. So thank you to the village that helped make this thesis possible. So the reason I went to Cincinnati was because nobody at St. Ed's knew what I was talking about. I think that might still be true.
So Helaine, the Cincinnati trip, that was in the fall?
Yes, that was in October.
And that was part of, so I remember your research well.
So that actually, yes. So my graphic design senior project was a desktop app that helps people connect to study Torah together. So Dr. Helaine Bach and I joked that it's like my big Jewish research year. So that trip actually really did help a lot with both projects, and I was able to talk with Dr. Rabbi Saracen, who's the mentor for every rabbinic thesis on liturgy for the past 20 years, which I mean, I read all of them. So it was really incredible to get to go and talk with him. And, like, sitting in the archives doing this research was probably the coolest thing that I've done in my undergraduate education. And St. Edward's had a part in sending me there, as well as HUC gave me some funding. So it was a really incredible way to dive really deeply into something that I had always known was there, but didn't really have the words to describe. Yes?
So you framed this at the beginning that when you were young and thinking that you wanted to have a part of the next revision. So I'm wondering, if you get to do that, do you have something in your mind for how you would want the next revision to be?
So there's this project that sort of lost steam, but it's really, really cool. It's called Visual Tefillah. And actually the rabbi who was working on it, his parents were in the same rabbinic class as my dad, but he was 10 years old when I wasn't born yet, so he's like already a rabbi. But it's a slide deck basically of the prayers in a very like customizable way. And I really like building systems, so I feel like that's something that I would want to take it back up and reinvigorate it, and then also figure out a way to make, so I did a lot of youth group growing up where we would like print off just photocopies of the Mishkan Tefillah, like not super legal, but it was all the same organization, so it's fine. But I think creating a system for students and people at universities to be able to access these prayers is something that I would want to focus on. I think that the books are great, and obviously there's this like incredible holy connection to vehicles for our text, but I think it's time to like expand even beyond that. I'd be excited about working on that. Yes.
Great presentation. I like what you said about how what we do with problematic texts and the importance of inviting struggle and how graphic design can be used to facilitate that. And I thought it was interesting because I usually think of graphic design as doing the opposite, that it's helping reduce struggle of the reader. And I was wondering if you could talk more about how you invite struggle while also trying to.
Right. So there's this idea that like great graphic design is mind control, that you're influencing the way that people act and think and even feel sometimes. But I think that, let me go back to, so the inclusion of, oh, okay. So like on this one, you have a whole footnote explaining this stuff that's going on up here. So like the idea that you can do it, but then, and I mean, I was in services every Friday for all of my childhood. So I have read every word on every page of this book because at some point you just tune it out and there's something to read. So all of these footnotes, which I think are probably underutilized for like the common worshiper, but they're there to sort of provide context to all these things that were decided in the committee meetings. Or there are votes on everything, like on whether we should explore a new blessing structure, like the order of the matriarchs. There was a vote on that, and like all of this stuff is in the archives, which was just incredible to read. But like every decision that was made, there's an explanation for it, which I think is really cool. Yes.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and it was also neat to get to see some of the influence, I think, from this in the Haggadot that you made for our Seder, which are so beautiful, and now I see sort of structurally where some of the organization came from. I was also really interested in learning more about how the problematic texts were included, and I think my question is really just, first of all, to clarify. So you said that for the most part, that each page is structured in the same way.
Yes.
And before in your earlier presentation, you were talking about decisions about how to include those, and should you simply not treat that some? So was that so everything is translated? Is that right?
So all of the information from those slides were taken from an article by Dahlia Marks in Israel. She was writing, looking at American, Canadian, Israeli prayer books, like all of the different ways that Reformed Jews respond to problematic texts. Mishkat Tefillah obviously takes the stance of they try for very true to Hebrew translations and then provide the interpretation in the interpretive readings on the left side.
I grew up with prayer. My memory is that there are no footnotes and a lot of stuff isn't translated at all. Is that right?
Everything's translated, almost nothing is transliterated, and all the transliterations are like at the back of the book.
Okay.
So that's what you're constantly flip. That's why I had a little ribbon to like mark your spot, because you were always flipping back and forth. But yes. It's probably time, right? Any other questions?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. And because Helaine mentioned her advisor, Kelly Koblach-Bouch, is in Italy. Kim Garza, who she also worked with, is going to present her school.
So, actually, Dr. Koblitz-Bach sent some remarks, so I'm going to read those and share those with you. Helaine Bach is such an amazing student, and from the beginning in terms of our work together on her thesis, I found her to have incredible initiative and to ask fantastic questions. Helaine's thesis work has been so innovative, bringing together Jewish studies and graphic design. Helaine has undertaken original archival research at the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, in which she explored the contributions of past generations and asked fresh questions of the historical documents that she encountered. Helaine has undertaken a careful study of Siddurim in the Reformed tradition and has also looked forward to the community's future. Helaine has many gifts in the realms of aesthetics, design, research, and appreciation for tradition. But I would also like to note how much I appreciate her writing and her ability to convey succinctly the heart of any matter. Helaine's work on her thesis is not only important in the abstract, but also for its practical implications for the Reformed communities today. Helaine, I hope you keep pursuing this research, and I'm so very proud of your research and this thesis. So that's all from Dr. Koblitz-Bach. So I also wholeheartedly echo those sentiments. And I also would like to add that your work serves as an excellent exemplary model of how design research can be conducted. So therefore, it's with great honor that I want to confer on you this honors.
See, with the talis, you go like that.
Congratulations.